Over 45 million standardized tests are administered to American students every single year. That number alone might not shock you. But research shows that students in the United States spend an average of 20 to 25 hours per year just taking these tests, and that does not even count the months of classroom time dedicated entirely to preparing for them. An entire generation is being measured, sorted, and judged by a system that was never designed to capture what truly makes a student intelligent, capable, or ready for life. In the next 10 minutes, you are going to discover exactly how standardized testing became the backbone of American education, why researchers and educators are increasingly alarmed by what it is doing to students, and the one uncomfortable truth that test makers and education policymakers have been quietly avoiding for decades. Because it turns out, the tool we built to create fairness in education may actually be doing the opposite, and the evidence is impossible to ignore. Let us go back to where this all began. Standardized testing in America has roots stretching back to the early 20th century. The Army Alpha and Beta tests, developed in 1917 to sort military recruits during World War I, were among the first large-scale standardized assessments in the country. After the war, educators and psychologists saw an opportunity. If tests could rank soldiers by mental ability, why not use the same logic to rank students? The SAT was introduced in 1926, modeled heavily on those military assessments. For decades, standardized tests were seen as a revolutionary leap toward fairness, an objective measure that could theoretically level the playing field between wealthy students with private tutors and working-class kids from underfunded schools. That idea sounds logical. But it had a fatal flaw baked in from the very beginning. The tests were not designed in a vacuum. They were built by people with specific cultural backgrounds, shaped by specific assumptions about knowledge, language, and learning. And for the next century, rather than questioning those assumptions, the American education system doubled down on them. The real explosion of standardized testing came in 2002 with the No Child Left Behind Act, signed by President George W. Bush. This legislation required every public school in the country to administer annual reading and math tests to students in grades 3 through 8 and once in high school. Schools that failed to show adequate yearly progress faced serious consequences: loss of funding, state takeover, or outright closure. Overnight, test scores were not just measures of student learning. They became measures of school survival. And that changed everything inside the classroom. Here's what nobody talks about when they celebrate test-based accountability. When schools are threatened with punishment based on scores, teachers do not have the freedom to teach. They have the pressure to drill. A 2015 report by the Council of the Great City Schools found that students in the largest urban districts take an average of 112 mandatory standardized tests between pre-kindergarten and 12th grade. 112 tests. That is roughly 8 or 9 mandatory tests per school year, every year, for 13 years straight. And this does not account for the weeks of practice tests and test preparation workbooks that consume instructional time throughout the year. The result is something educators call teaching to the test. Instead of exploring history through storytelling, encouraging scientific curiosity through experiments, or developing critical thinking through open-ended debate, classrooms increasingly focus on what will appear on the exam. Subjects like art, music, physical education, and social studies, areas that research consistently links to whole child development, get squeezed out of the schedule entirely. A 2006 survey by the Center on Education Policy found that 71% of school districts had reduced time for non-tested subjects since No Child Left Behind took effect. Students are not being educated more rigorously. They are being educated more narrowly. But the damage goes beyond what subjects get taught. It goes straight into students' mental and emotional health. The American Psychological Association has identified test anxiety as a genuine clinical concern affecting somewhere between 25 and 40% of students. These are not just nervous kids who get butterflies before a big exam. These are students who experience physical symptoms, racing heartbeat, nausea, headaches, even panic attacks, directly triggered by the high-stakes testing environment. For students who already struggle with anxiety or learning differences, a single standardized test can undo months of emotional progress and confidence building. And the cruelest part is that test anxiety itself interferes with performance. The very stress the test creates causes students to score lower than they actually would under normal conditions. The test does not measure what the student knows. It measures how the student performs under artificial, high-pressure circumstances. Now here is the statistic that should make every policymaker stop and rethink everything. A landmark study published in Educational Researcher found that standardized test scores correlate strongly with family income, more strongly than they correlate with academic effort, school quality, or innate ability. Students from the wealthiest families consistently outperform students from lower-income households. Not because wealthier students are inherently smarter, but because they have access to private test prep courses that can cost thousands of dollars, tutors who specialize in test strategy, calmer home environments with fewer financial stressors, and schools in affluent districts that receive more funding and resources. The SAT and ACT, tests that determine college access for millions of students, have been shown repeatedly to function more as a measure of socioeconomic status than as a measure of academic potential. This is the uncomfortable truth the testing industry does not want front and center. Colleges and universities have begun to notice. As of 2023, over 1,800 colleges and universities in the United States have adopted test-optional or test-blind admissions policies, including many highly selective institutions. The University of California system permanently eliminated the SAT and ACT requirement after research from their own faculty showed the tests were less predictive of college success than high school grades and far more correlated with family wealth. When the institutions that the tests were designed to serve begin rejecting the tests themselves, that is not a minor criticism. That is a verdict. But what does the evidence say about alternatives? Researchers who study student assessment point consistently toward a different model, one focused on performance-based assessments, portfolio evaluations, and project-based learning. These methods require students to demonstrate knowledge by actually applying it. A student who builds a functional bridge for a physics project, writes and defends a research paper, or creates a multimedia history presentation is demonstrating far more complex and meaningful skills than a student who correctly fills in a bubble on a multiple-choice sheet. Countries like Finland, which consistently ranks among the top in global education outcomes, use very little standardized testing. Finnish students are assessed primarily through teacher observation and portfolio work, particularly in the early years. The focus is on depth of understanding, not speed of recall. And the data from Finland is not an outlier. Research comparing high-testing and low-testing educational approaches consistently finds that students in lower-stakes environments show better long-term retention of material, higher levels of intrinsic motivation, and stronger critical thinking skills. When students learn because they are genuinely curious, not because a test is approaching, they learn differently and more deeply. So where does this leave American students today? In a system that spends billions of dollars annually on testing, the testing industry itself is estimated to be worth over $2 billion in the United States, while simultaneously seeing declining student engagement, rising mental health crises among school-aged children, and persistent achievement gaps that decades of test-based accountability have failed to close. The tests were supposed to identify and fix inequality. Instead, they have documented it year after year without solving it. The students sitting in classrooms across this country are not data points. They are curious, complex, creative human beings whose potential cannot be reduced to a percentile score. When we reduce education to what can be measured on a single test given on a single morning, we are not raising standards. We are lowering our vision of what human learning can actually be. The evidence is clear. The stakes are real. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Brain Boost Academy for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.